Good afternoon. Welcome to the Kim Hammer Show. Glad that you're joining us today. If you're out Christmas shopping, good luck. I saw some of the parking lots out there. They are pretty packed out, and so we hope that you're being safe. Do remind you, don't leave your valuables exposed in the car where people can look right in and see them. Keep them covered up. Don't leave your purses, ladies, gentlemen. If you're a concealed carrier, make sure that you got your weapon, well secured and everything and all the good stuff. Just your reminder notices. Hope that you have a great time. You're out shopping today. We'll give you a public service announcement. If you're in the vicinity of UALR, avoid it. They are graduating today, I do believe, and I came through there, and a long line of traffic. You'll sit in line for a while they clear out and get ready for the afternoon graduation. So I'd encourage you just to avoid that area unless you're going to go to the graduation. We'll get right into the show today. Glad to have everyone listening. We are working on bringing up Facebook Live. If you haven't, you can join my Facebook page. It's the Kim Hammer Show. Facebook page. If you'll join it and share it, please, we'll drive up our listeners and give you greater exposure ability to listen. Otherwise, you can tune in on my other page, Kim Hammer, Kim David Hammer, Facebook page. If you want to email a question in, our guests today are from the State Crime Lab, and I'll introduce them in just a second. But if you want to email in any questions, you can to kimhammershow at gmail.com, kimhammershow at gmail.com. Ben over here monitors that throughout the show, and so we'll be glad to get your question up on the air and before our guests today. Or if you want to call in, you can call in to 823-0965. That's 501-823-0965. My guests today are from the State Crime Lab. We have Kermit Channell, director of the State Crime Lab, otherwise referred to as Arkansas's version of NCIS. Just curiosity, how many times do y'all get asked that question or compared to it?
Quite often, it's we're used to it now, but it's good to have the recognition, even though we don't do everything like they do on TV.
And we'll talk about that in a minute, reality versus perception of a TV show. So you've gotten to the point then that when people say that, you can fake your laugh?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, all right, good deal. And then we have his assistant director, Cindy Moran. Pronouncing it right?
That's correct.
Very good. And she has brought with her her boss, Olivia, her 13-year-old daughter, who is probably wanting to go under the counter right now for all the Facebook folks that are watching and everything. But cool place to hang out with your mom today. And I do want to say thank you all for giving up your Saturday. I know we're getting up on the holidays, so I appreciate you giving up your Saturday and coming in here. First of all, just so people can, have a little bit of a perspective about you individually, anything you want to share with the listening audience, Kermit, about like where you grew up, where you went to college, and how is it you got into the business of being the director of the Arkansas State Crime Lab?
Oh, sure. And first, thanks for having us here. Really appreciate it. I think we always enjoy talking about the crime lab and what we do. But I started out years ago. I've been here at the crime lab for 30 years. I'm actually from Virginia, but I was an Army brat, so we traveled around a lot and ended up graduating from Benton. But I went to college at Elon College, which is a private school in North Carolina, and my goal was go to medical school. So in the 80s, I spent a little over 6 months working actually for the crime lab in the medical examiner's office. And then I moved to New York. I was in Poughkeepsie working pulmonary medicine and ended up going to John Jay College of Criminal Justice in Manhattan. And I realized really quick that I wasn't a New Yorker. I needed to come back to Saline County and fell back into forensics.
Very good. So your degree, are you a physician then, or
No.
what was your degree exactly?
Yeah, it's biology. My major was pre-med, but again, I just kind of wound up in the field of forensics. Yeah.
Very good. What part of New York were you from?
Poughkeepsie.
Okay. Is that upstate, or where is that?
Upstate, hour and a half north of the city.
Okay. My sister married a guy from Shortsville, New York, up in the Canandaigua region up there, the Finger Lakes and everything. So, and that is a beautiful part of the country once you separate out from New York City.
It is.
It's beautiful. All right. So, Cindy, how about a little background on yourself? We know you got at least a daughter. Okay. So tell us something else, if you will.
Right. Also have a son, Clayton, who's 11, and probably not near as exciting. I'm born and raised Arkansan, grew up in Sherwood, graduated from Sylvan Hills High School, went on to small liberal arts college, Lyon College in Batesville, Arkansas.
Good college.
And thought I wanted to do pre-med as well. That's really where I started. That's what got me into the sciences, graduated with a chemistry degree. And like I think a lot of college students really didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated. And I had always been told, don't jump into a program, a graduate program, unless you know what you really want to do. So I jumped into the workforce, hand-delivered a resume to the Arkansas State Crime Lab, and that's where I really began. So I've been at the Crime Lab for a little over 20 years. Started off as a drug chemistry on the bench analyzing drug cases, and have over time worked my way up through the system as the quality manager, the scientific operations director, and now the assistant director. So it's, once I started, I just really loved what I did. I felt like I was a public servant, really was making a difference with my chemistry degree.
So you've been with the crime lab 20 years?
Yes.
Is that your only state employment is with the crime lab then?
Yeah, it really is. That was the first job right out of college.
You are a dedicated state employee for the record if you've started with us. All right, Olivia, anything you want to say?
I don't have that much experience yet, but I go to Little Rock Christian Academy, and I'm into basketball and cheer.
Very good. Very good. Oh, look at there. You got an audience back there applauding for you, man. You're good. You're good. Star of the show. All right, so let's do this. You guys are located over on Natural Resource Way. Am I right on that?
Yes.
Okay, so just take me in the front door and just give people a visual tour over the radio and over Facebook of what they're going to find when they walk into the crime lab and the layout and just about the structure of the facility. And then we're going to go back and fill in the blanks as far as what each room does. And along the way, if you want to and you feel comfortable doing it, I think it would be kind of intriguing if you could talk about some of the cases that y'all have worked that, wouldn't violate any ongoing cases, obviously, but just to give the people a taste of some of the variances of the things that you deal with there at the crime lab. So get me in the front door and let's take the walk.
Okay. Basically, one of the things that I think it's important that everybody knows is that, we do all criminal casework for the entire state, all 75 counties. So there's never a moment that we don't have anything to do. So all law enforcement officers pretty much drive to Little Rock. They come in the front doors and they submit evidence to our evidence receiving unit. And it's a very busy place, and their real job is to take that evidence in all electronically and try to interact with that law enforcement officer to try to find out what's going on in the case and what can we offer to them with our scientific disciplines. And that's one of the first steps that they see. And one of the things that's really important is to help the officers understand exactly what we do, because there is a perception out there that we can do a little bit more than we can do sometimes. So we try to take a real active role in educating them.
So let me ask you something about that. So there's a crime that is committed anywhere in the state. Now, y'all have a lab up in Northwest Arkansas now, right?
Correct.
So distinguish the difference between what goes on up there and what goes on down here, what you handle exclusively that they can't handle up there.
Okay. With the Northwest Arkansas lab in Lowell, and that's a laboratory that is associated with state police. They basically gave us 10,000 square feet, and it's a really important laboratory for us because we're handling drugs and toxicology cases for the entire state up there for that region, which really encompasses about 36% of the entire state's backlog as far as drugs and toxicology. So those are the testing that we perform up there, which is again, it's a huge value for the state because it keeps our analysts from Little Rock from driving to Northwest Arkansas, and it helps us focus on other things a little bit more appropriately and efficiently in Little Rock. So obviously in Little Rock we do everything, and what I mean by everything, we still do drugs, we do toxicology, but we do property crimes, sexual assaults, homicides. And the other thing that we do are autopsies. We have, again, 75 coroners in the state, and they submit us any kind of death that could be questionable, or they basically don't know the cause and manner. So that's a big component of what we do. And, of course, everything that they get evidence-wise doing a forensic examination will come up to the rest of the laboratory.
Okay. So all the evidence that occurs at a crime scene, Cindy, all that evidence is in the hands of law enforcement from taking it from the crime scene. And do they have to transport it immediately to the crime lab, or are they able to stop at their local police department, say it's in a far-reaching area of the state, and then they can bring it in the next day? The chain of the information, the chain of the evidence from the crime scene, how is it handled?
Right. So they oftentimes don't bring it to us immediately. They bring it. We try to schedule because we're handling several hundred police agencies and bringing evidence in the door. So what we'll do is we'll schedule for them to come in. They'll bring the evidence into us, and then we create that electronic chain of custody from there. So I think oftentimes the misnomer is that we go out to the crime scenes. If you watch the CSIs and the NCIS, you see that oftentimes the scientific people are out on the crime scene where we're not. The law enforcement agencies are doing that with their crime scene units. Then they submit the evidence to us for us to do our scientific analysis.
You know, when I worked for MEMS Ambulance as a medic here, I'd go home, it'd drive my wife nuts because I'd go home and I'd watch all those ambulance shows on TV and everything. It'd drive her nuts because I'd say, that is not the way we really do it. So do y'all do that when you watch NCIS, or do you even grace the show yourself by watching it?
Yeah, actually, I used to watch it. It was really comic relief. You know, I mean, obviously we don't have mood music, good sunglasses, and we're not driving the fancy Hummers. And we don't solve our cases within 24 hours and arrest the bad guy. So it is comic relief for us, but it's been a double-edged sword. You know, there's a perception that we can do things that we can't, and there's a perception that we should do it quicker. But the reality is, you know, sometimes, you know, we can't. Sometimes we don't have forensic evidence in a case. So that's difficult sometimes to contend with.
Okay. So that makes you Gibbs. Are you Ziva then?
Sure. Yeah,
Sure, why not?
absolutely.
And that make you Abby? Does that make you Olivia? Does that make you Abby then?
Sure.
Sure. Why not? All right. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to pick up. So we got the evidence in the building now, and everything is electronically recorded. So we have good, accurate record keeping. I'm sure that's come a long ways. You've been there 20 years. How long you been there, Kermit?
30.
Oh, okay. You guys can kind of tell us where you've come over the last 30 years with that, and that's where we're going to pick up. This is the Kim Hammer Show. Thank you for joining us. We have Kermit Channell, who is the director of the Arkansas State Crime Lab. We have Cindy Moran, who is the assistant director. And then we have the boss, Olivia, which is Cindy's daughter, in studio with us today. And if you want to call in, you can to 501-823-0965, 501-823-0965, or email your question to kimhammershow@gmail.com, kimhammershow@gmail.com, and come back after this break.
This is Morgan with the RE/MAX Elite team of Central Arkansas. Many people feel vulnerable when it comes to renting, buying, or selling property. Can I trust this realtor? Will they protect my interests? Or are they just out to make a buck? We at RE/MAX Elite have a reputation for dedication and professionalism to meet our customers' needs. Visit selling-arkansas.com to view homes, commercial lots, and land properties. Let RE/MAX Elite help you find your dream property today. That's selling-arkansas.com.
If you have automotive questions, the Car and Truck Doctors have the answer. Every Saturday morning at 9 a.m., bumper-to-bumper certified service technicians are here to take your calls. From oil to spark plugs, engines to transmissions, they take your questions and give you the answers. The Car and Truck Doctors, brought to you by Bumper to Bumper on 101.1 FM The Answer. Visit your local bumper-to-bumper certified service center, Pinnacle Automotive, 24301 Chenal Parkway, Little Rock, 501-868-4200.
Hugh Hewitt still doesn't see evidence of a crime.
What the Nadler report admits by its omission, what it implies, is that despite all the exertions of Special Counsel Mueller, of Chairman Schiff and Nadler, of the 1,000 journalists that work on finding one crime, there is no crime to be detailed.
The Hugh Hewitt Show. Weekday mornings at 5, right before Mike Gallagher at 8 on 101.1 FM. The Answer.
Hi, I'm Mark, a local mortgage originator with Motto Mortgage. When looking for a new home, you've got options, so many options. You can choose the perfect home for you, so why shouldn't you do the same with your home loan? Motto Mortgage can give you just that, choice. With hundreds of loan options, we do the shopping for you. Motto Mortgage, a local mortgage broker, giving you more choices, here to help you find the perfect home loan for your specific needs. To find a local professional, visit our website at mottoalliance.com.
Let's face it, we love Alexa, and we love to let her find your favorite radio station. This one, of course. We love it too when she finds us, but she could find us easier if we taught her a simple skill. To get started, simply say, Alexa, enable the Answer Little Rock skill. After she confirms, you can then say, Alexa, play The Answer Little Rock, and Alexa will learn how to find us. You can listen to us through your Amazon Echo, Echo Show, Echo Dot, and Amazon Tap devices. Alexa, what is your favorite radio station?
That's easy. 101.1 FM, The Answer.
Your Arkansas Symphony brings classic Christmas fun to Little Rock, December 21st and 22nd at the Robinson Center with Home Alone, film with orchestra. Bring your family and friends to see the full film in HD while the Arkansas Symphony plays the charming John Williams score live to picture. Tickets start at only $16 and kids come free on Sunday. Call 666-1761 or visit arkansasymphony.org to get your tickets today.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. This is Kim Hammer, your host. We're glad that you're joining us. We have in the studio today the director and assistant director of the Arkansas State Crime Lab, and we are getting some questions emailed in, so if you'll keep listening, we'll get to those questions as we kind of go along. Let's come back. So we got the evidence in the building now. We kind of talked through the process from the crime scene to you taking possession of the evidence, which if there's any, God forbid, any tampering of evidence along the way, you secure it. I guess when you bring that evidence in, you have a certain protocol or standard. So if anything happened to it prior to it getting to you, you've got a firewall between you and somebody that may have tampered with the evidence on the scene. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. And basically, when the evidence comes in, our evidence technicians that are intaking the evidence, they look at the seals because it's really important for us to make sure. Let's say a bag of evidence that comes in, and it has a tape seal, has the officer's initials on it, and it hasn't been tampered with when it's brought to us. And that's important all the way through the system. So we document that because, as you know, if we disrupt the chain of custody or if the integrity of the evidence is faulty, then it doesn't matter what we do in the laboratory. It's going to be thrown out in court. So we pay particular attention to those kinds of things to make sure that that it's not compromised.
And you kind of hate to think that this happens, but humans are humans and they either make mistakes or they intentionally do things. Over your years of 30 years, Kermit, you as a director, Cindy, 20 years as assistant director, what percentage would you say you realize that somebody's tampered with the evidence before it got to you? 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000?
Yeah.
Any measurable way to...
It's very rare, but we have had those circumstances, especially with drug chemistry lab, where items of evidence for drugs, let's say, have come in and they have been tampered with. And our drug chemists are very well equipped to identify those situations. And again, it's looking at the seals, making sure that nothing could escape. And we inventory everything that we do. So if there's any kind of discrepancy, we note that and we follow up with investigating agency or sometimes the state police if it requires a different type of internal investigation.
And I've been to your crime lab, and you all were generous to give me a tour all the way down to where the bodies are stored, I might add. So when it gets in and you've got your room that not just anybody can get into your evidence room either. You got a pretty tight procedure for how people can get in and out. And, I don't want to talk about all the down and dirty details that would give away anything, but it's a very secured area as far as where the evidence is kept. So talk about, if you can, how it's logged in, but then once you start, and how far behind are you on cases anyway?
Well, it really varies depending on what discipline. And I can let Cindy talk a little bit more to the backlog and what that looks like across the different sections of the laboratory.
Well, okay, go ahead, Cindy.
Right. So, for example, our drug chemistry section, we're about a 4 to 5 month turnaround time. And I think it was about September of last year. It was actually a lot larger. It was about a 9-month turnaround time. And we keep hitting new records of cases being received into the laboratory, and we're expecting to reach almost 23,000 cases, just drug cases alone, coming into the laboratory. And if you look back 5 years ago, it was about 17 or 18,000. So we're seeing a dramatic increase in the number of cases coming into the laboratory, not just in drug chemistry. You can kind of look across all the disciplines, firearms and DNA and toxicology, and just the numbers keep increasing.
On the drug one, let me ask you, what kind of drugs are increasing the caseload? I know they're illegal or they wouldn't be in your hands, but what kind of drugs are increasing? Is it marijuana? Is it fentanyl? Or what is it?
Methamphetamine is actually the number one drug that we're seeing come into the laboratory. It is still a problem here in Arkansas. Of course, the opioid epidemic, we see a lot of prescription drugs coming in the door, but also your illicit opioids such as fentanyl and heroin. Marijuana, we still get a lot of cases of marijuana coming in as well. So, but methamphetamine definitely is the one that's a big problem here in Arkansas.
And we'll get back on subject in a minute, but let me go down this rabbit hole for a minute on the drugs. So in your testing, in your lab, I think I remember when I took a tour, one of the things that you deal with are drugs that come in that have had things added to them, if I remember right. So is that part of what when you have the drugs, what are you looking for? Are you looking to the quality? Are you looking to see if somebody laced it with something that resulted in a death? Or what is it that you look for when you're dealing with the drugs?
So oftentimes what we're getting is green vegetable material. We're getting white powder, brown powder, uh, different types of pills and capsules. And what we're doing is just identifying everything that's in that substance. And so oftentimes, they think it's just maybe heroin, but it's not. It's laced with fentanyl, which is, as you know, it's very dangerous, and the potency of fentanyl is so much greater than heroin. Not to downgrade heroin, but it's, I think oftentimes individuals on the street, they have no idea what's in these powders. And that's what we're really seeing, is that these cases that we're working are becoming more complicated. It's no longer, when I was working cases back in 99, it's no longer a simple bag of cocaine or a simple bag of marijuana. It's now we're getting cases that have marijuana, methamphetamine, and tablets that have opioids. And so the cases are just, you're seeing a mix of drugs. And I think that reflects also when you look at the deaths, drug overdose deaths that we're receiving. When you look at that information from our toxicology testing, it's no longer just one drug. It's a mixture of drugs that it's killing people.
And one thing I found interesting was you've got some pretty sophisticated equipment over there. The machine that, if I may stumble through this, so straighten me out, but the machine that when you have to separate a drug, it actually can separate it down to, that's how you tell what's in that, or talk about that for just a second, what that machine does.
Right. So we use gas chromatography, mass spectroscopy, not to get too scientific, but that's our main workhorse in the drug section. And what we can do is we can inject that on the instrument. You've probably seen it on CSI, or at least a box of it on CSI. And really what it does is it separates out each component that's in that substance. So oftentimes it's not just methamphetamine. It'll be a cutting agent, which is something to dilute that substance.
Such as?
Dimethylsulfone, different types of vitamins can be cut with the drug as well. And the intent with that is it makes it go further, as far as if they have intent to deliver.
With the risk that if you buy it thinking it's one thing, once you inject it, you may find out that it's something different. Subsequently, you could die from it. So I don't know how many people are listening or going to watch Facebook Live that, are using drugs or anything, or buying them. But that's always, to me, the one thing is if they're buying it, but they don't really know what they're getting until the effects of it hit them. And if you got people out there that are cutting it down in order to stretch their drugs longer, they're going to add anything they can to it, as long as it doesn't alter the appearance, to where they can make more bang for their buck when they sell it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're also seeing that with prescription tablets, where they'll have similar markings and colors and shapes as something that you would get from the pharmacy, but it has illicit drugs in these substances. So yeah, it's very scary.
Okay. So we've got you get it into the evidence room, and now it's going to start being farmed out. So do individuals work on all the different areas that have to be investigated, or are they specialized to their own individual compartment, so that if it's a drug case, it goes to this person; if it's a sexual assault, it goes to this one; if it's a murder, it goes to this one? In about a minute, tell me how you farm out the work.
Sure. We are specialized, so if it's a drug case, it's going to go to the forensic chemistry area of the laboratory. If it's a sexual assault case, and every case is going to be complex and different. So if it is a sexual assault case, it could have a lot of different evidence that might go to forensic biology to identify biological fluids, but at the same time, it might have a firearm involved, and it's going to go to the firearms section. So we are really specific in what we do. We try to cross-train when we can to make it more efficient. But our DNA analysts specifically just do that. They just do DNA work.
All right. Well, let me hold you there, because we want to talk about who you hire, and we want to talk about the qualifications of who you hire, because the agency is only as good as the integrity of the people that work there and the skill set of the people that work there. This is the Kim Hammer Show on 101.1 FM The Answer. Come back after the break, and we'll pick up the conversation with Kermit Channell, Director of the Arkansas State Crime Lab, Cindy Moran, Assistant Director, and Olivia, who's really pushing the show, her daughter.
Hello, I'm Arkansas Insurance Commissioner Alan Kerr. Open enrollment for Arkansas Health Insurance Marketplace ends December 15th, so the time to sign up is now. If you have questions about your health insurance coverage, we're here to assist you. Just call our helpline at 844-355-3262 to get help with your health insurance questions. You can also visit myarinsurance.com to learn more. Once again, open enrollment ends December 15th. Call us today at 844-355-3262.
Salem Media is the leader in inspiring, thought-provoking family content. From music to talk to Bible teaching, businesses all around Central Arkansas are benefiting from advertising on our radio stations. But radio is only a small portion of what we do. From website design and development to social media ads to search engine optimization and so much more. We can help grow your business digitally. Call us today and let's get started. 501-404-6560.
This is Michael Medved at michaelmedved.com for Town Hall. The Democrats seem determined to impeach President Trump without a single Republican congressman or senator offering support for their reckless assault. This hyper-partisan, ill-conceived course of action won't punish the president, who only seems to gain strength from the other side's impeachment obsession, but it will punish the country at large and damage public faith in our institutions. The Democrats stand no chance of removing Trump from office. They'll never get the two-thirds vote they need in the Republican-dominated Senate, so it's hard to see what they hope to accomplish. Most analysts suggest the Democrats mean to paralyze the nation for weeks in the vain hope they'll diminish support for his re-election bid next year. If that's what they're thinking, then the Dems are guilty of precisely the same approach they impute to Trump in the first article of impeachment, abusing power by putting their own narrow political interests ahead of the country's good. I'm Michael Medved.
Sponsored by ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom. Let's face it, we love Alexa, and we love to let her find your favorite radio station. This one, of course. We love it too when she finds us, but she could find us easier if we taught her a simple skill. To get started, simply say, Alexa, enable the Answer Little Rock skill. After she confirms, you can then say, Alexa, play The Answer Little Rock, and Alexa will learn how to find us. You can listen to us through your Amazon Echo, Echo Show, Echo Dot, and Amazon Tap devices. Alexa, what is your favorite radio station?
That's easy. 101.1 FM, The Answer.
How do you choose your dentist? I'm Dr. John Sheffield, and I want to share what we provide. First is a relationship. You need a dentist that takes the time to get to know you and what works best for you. Second is environment, an office that is friendly, helpful, and works together to provide clinical excellence. Finally, a dentist is only as good as his team, and we strive to create real relationships in a caring environment with the best dental team in Central Arkansas. Our office phone is 501-217-0567, 501-217-0567.
Over the past decade, hundreds of broadcast ministries have multiplied their listenership through a partnership with OnePlace.com, the largest online Christian broadcast platform. Here's Greg Laurie.
By partnering with OnePlace, we've been able to expand our online ministry in a way that complements our current web strategy for maximized outreach and impact.
Steve Arterburn.
Through our partnership with OnePlace, we've been able to grow our online ministry in ways that, well, we just never would have been able to do it otherwise.
John MacArthur.
This is a partnership we enjoy and for which we thank the Lord.
Colin Smith.
Our partnership with OnePlace.com has multiplied our ministry effectiveness. We're reaching new listeners every day.
And Dr. David Jeremiah.
Many of the new listeners we reach here each day through OnePlace are now faithful ministry supporters.
Introduce your message to the largest online Christian audience on the web. Visit us today at oneplaceradio.com to learn how. That's oneplaceradio.com.
Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. Glad you're joining us this afternoon. Just a public service announcement. If you're in the area of UALR and you don't have a reason to be there for the graduation services, you might want to avoid the area. A little congested down there when I came through. Today we have in studio the Arkansas State Crime Lab, Kermit Channell, the director, who's been with the agency for 30 years, right? And then his assistant director, Cindy Moran, who's been there for 20 years. She's brought her daughter, Olivia, who's complimented our studio well today. The one thing I also want to mention to you is that some of the folks I like to give a shout out to every week are those that help make this possible. Edwards Food Store. If you're there's like 9 to 11 of them here in Central Arkansas, over there in the eastern part, Forest City, down to Marianna, up to Harrisburg. Stores over there, they are excellent stores to shop in. You get good value, clean stores, friendly service, all the things you want to experience. Now they can, even if you'll order your food ahead of time, have it ready for you. So it's a great place to go into support. And then also Duck's Garage down in Benton on Air Lane Drive. You got an automobile needs that you have, especially with fleet service or diesel mechanic service. Go down there and see Duck at Duck's Garage. He and his family-owned business, they will take care of you. All right, so with regards, you were talking about, and you were throwing out the titles and the descriptions of the people that work over at the crime lab. What does it take to work at the crime lab, and what if somebody wanted to go to work over there? What are you looking for in the way of skill sets, or if somebody's listening and maybe they're trying to decide, like you talked about, Cindy, and Kermit, you even talked about how you got into it, that you weren't really sure what you wanted to be, but here you are now 20 and 30 years later. What should somebody know as far as what you're looking for?
Yeah, I really think most of the applicants that we're looking for is strong science. So whether that's in chemistry, biology, biochemistry, that's what's going to be required for most of the sections of the laboratory. And then, of course, in our medical examiner section, you have to have a medical degree in forensic pathology. So I think the dynamics have changed since I even applied back in 1999, where it's just a chemistry or biology degree. I think now people have more advanced degrees, so they might have that solid chemistry or biology, which is what we want. Some now have masters in forensic science, and what's good about that is that person really wants to be in forensics. I think oftentimes you might have someone like me who jumps into it and then maybe realizes, I want to go on to medical school or dental school, and we lose some of our analysts in that regard. But knowing that someone has that forensic science background is good. But I think if I were going to give advice to someone that's in college now, it's like get that chemistry and biology degree, because it is hard to get your foot in the door at a forensic laboratory. So you don't want to tie yourself down just with forensics. But then if you're interested in it, go on and to a graduate program and get that background so you really understand what you're getting into.
Okay, so what schools in Arkansas specialize in forensic that if they get the basic foundation that you're talking about, do we have any in Arkansas, or they have to go out of state to get that?
I think right now you have to go out of state to get that. I think there's a few institutions that are working on some forensic programs, but Oklahoma is probably the closest. There's some in West Virginia, Florida.
Georgia. Yeah, there are some good programs out there, but there's really not a big track record right now in Arkansas that specialize in forensic science.
So if somebody wants to do this, they're going to have to be specific as far as where they go. And if somebody has a skill set that you're looking for, tell them how they can go and see what job openings you have. You all have your own individual website, or give them some direction real quick.
So it's just like any other state job. It's www.arstatejobs.com, and that'll be listed under the Arkansas State Crime Laboratory. And so I always tell my supervisors when they're looking at applicants and we're interviewing, you have to have the best fit for the laboratory. And, it could be, it's not necessarily the smartest person, but it's a person who has that passion for what we do, because we truly are public servants. It's not a job where you're going to get wealthy, but it's a job that's fulfilling. And that's really what we try to emphasize to the individuals that are coming into the laboratory. It's a job when you go home at night and you know that you've made a difference in what you're doing.
And that can present some challenges, because I know that y'all strive to hold a national certification level, and we've had some discussions, in the personnel committee when y'all came through. The talk about that and the importance of having that national certification, or correct me out on the terminology there, that you have to have with regards to your medical director, because that speaks directly to the integrity of the cases and how that relates to when you go to court to testify about what you've done at the crime lab.
Yeah, absolutely. We are accredited laboratory. All the scientific disciplines are nationally accredited, and that's extremely important because, we just don't develop techniques and technologies and decide as Arkansas we're going to start doing these things. We have to follow guidelines that are nationally recognized and validated systems. So a lot of people don't understand what that entails. But for instance, if I'm a bench level chemist, and I do work on a case, I just don't issue a report and have my opinions. I have to have a secondary qualified analyst look at that as well. And also, after that, I have to have someone do an administrative review to make sure it's accurate, it's following guidelines and policies. And that gives our customer, if you will, confidence that we're doing things that, number one, are above board and recognized nationally, because ultimately everything that we do, our ultimate capstone event, if you will, is testifying in court. And we have to have the confidence to make sure that those things can withstand any kind of scrutiny. And as far as the medical examiner's office, we're also accredited by the National Association of Medical Examiners, which is extremely important. The thing that does is, it, again, make sure that we're doing everything appropriately on national standards. And that goes as well as how many cases that we do a year. And that's really critical, because in Arkansas, we have 2 vacancies now, and it's very hard to fulfill to fill those positions. And that's not just a problem in Arkansas, it's a problem around the country, because there are not that many medical examiners coming out of school today, which is a very lengthy and a very costly program to get. So, those things concern us, because, we have the citizens of Arkansas, they deserve, the correct answers in a timely manner on when a loved one dies, to determine, the cause and manner of death. Because we all know without an official death certificate, it's very difficult to get anything done. So we pay attention to that, and we're actively recruiting to make sure that, we can fulfill our needs and the citizens' needs of Arkansas.
Well, and we were talking a while ago about, before we took the break, about when something comes in, depending on what kind of case it is. And some cases I would understand would overlap, like if a gun's involved in a bad drug deal, you're going to have to work from 2 or 3 different angles. But in the example you gave a while ago, in the drug area, you're 4 to 5 months behind, which is, that's up from where it was, but the volume of what you're dealing with is up also. What percentage of the cases that you deal with, though, turn into cold cases, and how do you go about dealing with the cold cases that are over at the lab?
Well, as far as cold cases, a lot of those, of course, like homicides, for instance, when a case goes cold, sometimes that we don't know it at the laboratory, so we don't have a very good mechanism to know if something goes unsolved. So it really is up to law enforcement agency to contact us. A lot of agencies have cold case teams, and when they do, the first thing we do is we try to get all our case files, all our scientists together. We interact with law enforcement. We have them come into the laboratory and have a round table, because we want to make sure that if we did a case from 1990, that we didn't miss anything back then, or did we use the appropriate technology, and what will the technology do today that might help solve that crime. So those are the big challenges with cold cases, but we've been very successful in solving a lot of those.
So the evidence, and you saying that made me think about something. The evidence never changes, because once you've got the evidence in your hand, you've got it sealed, secured, and you've done the initial evaluation of it. Then you're just waiting for the court date to come up. And then do you have to go into court, or does your team have to go in court and testify on every one of these? Or is it one of those things where they get your report, the prosecutor takes your report and does it, and then you just get called in maybe on exceptional cases, or how does that work? DNA and all those advancements, how has that changed over the years to where these cold cases have a greater chance of being filed? And give me an example of what a cold case is.
Sure.
That's successful.
No, okay. One of the cases was mine that I worked originally back in 1990. It was Pamela Felkin's case out of Faulkner County. And in this case, a young girl was working at a video store. She was basically managing it and disappeared. And unfortunately, her body was found, and she had been assaulted and murdered. And this was in 1990. We didn't have a DNA laboratory until actually 1995, and we weren't doing casework in DNA until 1996. So in 1990, we did develop a biological profile, actually, that was developed from the FBI. And the technology was different then. So I believe it's in 2000, we actually reached out to the FBI. They sent samples back on the case, and we reanalyzed it in our own laboratory with the current technology. So what happened, we were able to develop a DNA profile and put it into the database. And it sat in the database, and it searched in Arkansas and all across the country for years, and no results. And we really thought that this was a potential for a serial killer.
Okay, let me interrupt you. So you watch NCIS, you got Abby stand in front of the screen, and it's doing all that popping up kind of stuff, and it goes on for the whole show. Is that kind of what you're talking about? I mean, does it, once you enter it, is the machine always working until it gets a hit, or when does it stop trying?
Yeah, it continues to try. If we have a DNA profile in the database, it's always going to search, and it's going to search even if we solve the case, because we still put that evidence in the database, because we want to make sure that, number one, it could be another crime out there that we didn't know about. We wanted to make sure we solved that. And the other thing is, we always talk about DNA to help, maybe convict an individual, but the other side of the coin is the exonerations, because that's the other part of that's very important. We want to make sure that no one is wrongly convicted, and DNA is one of the best tools to help exonerate an individual.
Okay, and I'm not a scientist, obviously, but I'm a guy that's never committed crime. I did get stopped last week by the state police. Sorry about that. But anyway, I've never committed crime or anything, and other than going to the doctor, how would you get access to my DNA that if I went crazy stupid and committed crime, how do you connect that to the honest, law-abiding citizen how do you connect that?
Yeah, well, if you're an honest, law-abiding citizen, you've never been arrested for a felony offense in Arkansas, chances are you're not going to have a DNA profile in the database. But in Arkansas, we're an arrestee state. So if you're arrested for any kind of felony offense, you're required to submit a DNA sample to the crime laboratory. And most states have that type of legislation, and that's why we're able to connect crimes. So like you said, if you're an honest, abiding citizen, you probably won't have your DNA sample in there until the time you commit a crime. And that's just like the Pamela Felkin's case. We looked for the individual based on the DNA for years and didn't have any results. And ultimately, we were able to use a couple things with technology, a process called phenotyping, where you can look at the DNA and you can determine what the individual might look like. And that was an important step in that case to try to generate investigative leads. When that failed, we went to genealogy. And the genealogy, it was actually what helped to solve that particular case or identify the biological fluids that were identified in the case. And so ultimately, we were able to use genotyping. I mean, you can't speak to many people today who don't have their DNA profiles in DNA and Me and just different kinds of genealogy databases. So we're able to use that technology to actually find the individual, a relative of the individual that fit the DNA profile match. And we found that individual, and even though he died in 2002, we were able to confirm that based on a relative's DNA profile. So, getting back to cold cases, one of the things that we always do when we're notified by law enforcement or we know which cases are cold is we try to do that. We try to make sure we're using the existing technology to help solve that case.
Okay, so these people that are sending in their DNA and doing all this, lineage, checking out their family tree and all that sort of stuff, if they submit that, they're honest, law-abiding citizen, does that give you access to those records when you're searching for a crime? And how do those two connect? That if that's being given to a private company and you're a state agency investigating a cold case or an ongoing crime, what bridge do you have the authority to go into those private files of those people?
Yeah, and as crime labs don't have that ability to actually access those, Typically, private companies will have some way of accessing some of these genetic databases, but we don't, as a state agency, do that. One of the things that these genetic laboratories are doing now, they have an opt-in or opt-out program. So you'll know on the front end, if you're going to search for a relative, that you're going to check that box saying, I want to opt out. That means that your DNA profile will not be searched in any way against crime scene profiles. However, I think what we're hopeful is that people opt in. People typically want to help if there's a case out there that they want to be solved, even if it is a relative somewhere in their history, in their family tree.
So if a person opts in, and if you don't do anything wrong, you don't have to worry about it, does that actually help you then, by process of elimination, to narrow the pool of who you could look at? Say, for example, I do that, I opt in, I haven't done a crime, not planning on doing a crime. By the fact that I'm accounted for in the population, but I'm segregated out because I've opted in, does that help you?
It does in those cases. Again, we as a crime laboratory don't directly access that data, but there are genealogists that might work for law enforcement or contracted out by law enforcement agencies to solve cold cases, and they'll have the ability to do that. And that's the thing. I think that it's a valuable tool that a lot of cold cases are being solved around the country by the nature of genealogy work. And these individuals are very good at what they do. They're going back to death records, birth records, things of that nature to try to track down who this individual's relatives could be.
Okay. So, Cindy, when I took the tour and y'all took me on it, I met one of the physicians down there, one of the individuals that actually does the autopsy. How long does it take to do an autopsy when you get somebody in? And all autopsies, even with the crime lab up in Northwest Arkansas, if it's an autopsy, it comes to the Little Rock office. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So how long does it take you to complete an autopsy, and what do you look for, or explain a little bit about the process of doing an autopsy on somebody?
Yeah, I think every case is a little bit different. Some, it doesn't take near as long as maybe others that have multiple gunshot wounds. But, our goal is quality first, and then also getting finished with it in a timely manner so that we can release that individual back to the family. And so what our goal is, if we receive a body for autopsy, that we're autopsying it that morning and hopefully releasing it by that afternoon.
But the research into the crime goes on for how long, or what? Give me an example of the time frame, because you do the autopsy of the body, but that's not where the work stops once you release the body, because your medical professionals and your research team, investigative team, they're still working on that for how long?
Right. So it really starts with our field investigators and trying to understand the scene, get crime scene photos, get medical records, any information that they can get for the forensic pathologist to help. But then also there may be evidence that's collected from the body itself, and that may include making slides for histology, samples that are going to go on to toxicology to look for drug overdose or any other type of poison. Could be trace evidence that's removed from the body, DNA evidence. So yeah, you're right that the work doesn't stop. It then gets transferred up to our different sections of the laboratory, and hopefully put all the pieces together for the pathologist.
So y'all give tours of the crime lab to the general public? If a teacher wanted to bring a class to tour, tell us about that.
Yeah, so we really we would be doing it every second of the day probably if we just opened the doors. But what we try to focus on high school students, college students who are in those scientific areas that have that interest in potentially working at a crime laboratory, because we want to open the doors and say, this is what it's really like. It's not quite like your NCIS and your CSI, but this is what you would be doing every day. And we're working on trying to get something on our website so it's more scheduled, so that it's not an interruption to our day, because that's the last thing we want is to interrupt the work that's being done.
Okay. You take them on tour of all the crime lab?
Sometimes a window tour, because we don't want,
Okay.
like I said, we don't want it to be disruptive, or we also don't want to be in those areas where we could compromise any kind of contamination. So, but we have good windows.
Yeah. Well, and that was one thing I was impressed. When I took the tour, y'all were very good about protecting the environment where the investigation. In fact, the day I was there, I think the lady had a catalytic converter cut off a car. And, so it's not just about the body parts that you're looking at. It's about all the evidence, regardless of whatever it is. In 2 minutes or less, Cindy, what has been your most unique case that you can talk about that you've worked in your 20 years at the crime lab?
Well, being a drug chemist, it wasn't near as exciting as a lot of the DNA evidence. But the one case I hear the DNA examiners talk about was a case in which a business was burglarized. They had a party the day before, and then there was, when law enforcement entered the building, there was pizza left out on one of the tables, and they asked the owner, "Did you guys leave this pizza out, half-eaten pizza?" And they said no. And so law enforcement was wise enough to take a swab of the bite mark of where the pizza was eaten and submitted it to us, and we were able to generate a DNA profile and help law enforcement in that case.
Cool. Kermit, any case other than one you mentioned a while ago that stands out in your 30-year career?
Well, I would say the most interesting case was the blue light rapist case. And as probably a lot of the listeners know, they remember that case where this guy was actually pulling people over and he's actually burglarizing homes and assaulting women. And we were able to help that case. We were able to identify that individual. And I think that was the most satisfying case because of the fear that individual instilled in the citizens of Arkansas. So it's always nice when you can help identify those people to prevent further crimes from occurring. So that was one of the biggest ones.
And, that is one point I'd like to drive home. It is critical that you have the resources you need to get the crime solved as quickly as possible to take the bad people off the streets. If I'm a loved one that has had somebody that a crime has been committed against, whether it's murder or whatever the case may be, one thing that I think is essential is that we give you the resources you need to cut that from a 4 to 5 month time, down to a shorter one, which is something we'll, need to work on. Have toured your facility. It's nothing like what you see on TV, folks. I'll tell you that for a fact. You're working in a building that's how old?
Oh, I guess we've been in that building now 37 years.
Yeah. And so the autopsy lab is right out of the 37-year-old time frame, too. But anyway, I want to give you kudos for what you do. We appreciate what you do. A lot of times you don't, get it on the front page as far as the valuable, contribution you make in solving crime. So I want to give you public kudos for that. The one thing you hit on, we'll kind of wrap it up with this, is it's also the whole chain needs to be quality individuals, beginning first of all with the law enforcement that's going to be investigating the scene, because if you don't have good quality law enforcement out there that is protecting the evidence, then it's a problem all the way up right to conviction. All right, in the last minute, y'all have anything you want to share, anything you want to say there, Kermit?
Well, I think my last thing I'd say is that, we are a group of dedicated forensic scientists that we believe in what we do, and we like what we do every day. I mean, it's a job that you can, I think Cindy said, you can go home at night knowing that you've done something good for the citizens of Arkansas. And if we didn't believe that, I don't think Cindy would be here after 20 years, and I certainly wouldn't be after 30. So we do appreciate the opportunity to give those things to the state.
Very good. Cindy, anything?
I think you covered it all.
Very good. Olivia, anything? No, you're good. You're good. Thank you for being on the show with us today. You've been listening to the Kim Hammer Show. We've had on as our guest today Kermit Channell, the director of the State Crime Lab, his assistant director, Cindy Moran, daughter, Olivia. Glad to have you in the studio as well today. We appreciate our folks that help make this show possible. Thank you to Edwards Food Store. Encourage you to shop and support them. You'll find everything you're looking for in a food store when you go and visit them, and you'll find good, friendly people in a clean environment. Also, want to say thank you to Duck's Garage down in Benton. Appreciate the support that they give to make this show possible. And as always, thank you to our listeners that are listening today. This is the Kim Hammer Show. See you next Saturday.
101.1 FM, The Answer. KDXE FM, Kamak Village, Little Rock. A Salem Media Group station. 101.1 FM, The Answer.